Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Whoa, did I make a mistake? It was around 2005 or 2006. My family and I went to an arts and crafts show in Dahlonega, Georgia. My mom had a booth there and it was a weekend kind of deal. We got there a day early to set up, but the following day, it was around noon. I decided I was gonna go walk around and look at other people's booths and to go try to find some food. There was this like really unique street with some like local mom and pop shops. I decided that I was gonna go walk down, see what they had to offer. You know, it's a little quaint town, kind of looked like it was straight out of a movie. So I started going down the street to these stores and I came across this one shop that looked really interesting. It had like muted earth tones, kind of not vibrant at all. There were store closing signs, and it kind of looked like a bookstore. So I was like, okay, I'll go in and check this out, see what's going on. So I walk in and I'm greeted by this lady who's wearing all black. She has like this lace sleeves that go like all the way down and it goes like over her fingers. Anyway, she had like a goth vibe, neither here nor there, but that's kind of the vibe of the whole place. So I walked around, I started looking at the books, and I noticed that most of them were all like witchcraft books, and there were like a lot of those healing crystals. And anyway, so none of that really interests me. I was getting ready to leave, and the lady stopped me and she said, hey, did you go look at the back room? And I said, no, I didn't see a back room. And she said, right over there. And she pointed to these like really big ornate red curtains. And she was like, yeah, it's just back there. So I said, okay, well, I'll go check it out, see what's back there. So I walked back there and she followed like closely behind me. And she said, hey, I want to show you something. And I said, okay, sure. She takes me over to this triangle that's on a stand. This triangle is wooden and it has like this eye carved into the center. Around the eye was the alphabet and numbers 0 through 9. Around the outside of the triangle, there's like this dial with this pointer. And one could assume that the pointer was to like spell out words. It looked kind of similar to a Ouija board, but in triangular form, if that makes any sense. But anyway, the lady asked me if I wanted to try something fun, which I said, sure. So she asked me to think of a question, but don't give it to her. Don't say it out loud. She told me to look at the triangle, look like right into the eye of the triangle and think of the question, but really focus and think of the question. And then she said that she would leave me for a little bit and come back and check on me. So I did. I looked straight into the triangle eye and looked and thought of my question. And I did this for a few minutes, nothing happened, and I was like, this is stupid. Like, I'm the biggest skeptic of these things anyway, so I didn't believe anything was going to come from it. But as I was about to walk off, the dial starts moving on its own. Now, remind you, she did tell me not to touch the triangle. Everything had to be done like on its own, so without any interference by me whatsoever. I looked at the triangle, the dial starts moving, it goes to the letter M, and then proceeds to spell out my name, Michael. It did that all by itself. That super freaked me out, and I was just kind of dumbfounded that this was actually real. So I stayed there for probably an hour, like asking different questions to this thing, and every single time it got them right and it was moving on its own. I was super enamored by this thing at this point, and I was like, okay, I need to go get my mom and my sister so they can vouch for me that I'm not crazy and that this is actually doing this on its own and answering the questions. So I decide that I'm gonna leave and go get them. But as I start to leave, this triangle starts moving again, trying to keep me there, I guess. But I didn't ask it any questions this time. It started asking me questions. It asked me if I wanted to know my future. It asked me if I wanted to know the day that I would die. Then it asked me if I wanted to be friends. To which I said no to all of them. No, thank you. No. But anyway, against my better judgment, I went and got my mom and my sister. They did not want to come with me at first. They thought I was weird for like even going in there in the first place, and I shouldn't be going into witchcraft, blah, blah, whatever. Anyway, but I was so convicted and serious in what had happened that my mom and sister came along against their better judgment as well. So they come back in the store with me. The lady greets us. She's like, "Oh, I know why you're here." And I go walk to the back of the store. I take my mom and my sister over. My sister's the first one to give it a try. She looks into the eye. I explain everything. Don't touch it. Just think your question. And she asked, like, how old am I? Like, in her mind, she thought it. And it gave the answer. She was freaked out. She said, "Done. I'm done with this." So then my mom thought that, like, my sister and I were playing a prank. So she was like, "Okay, I'm going to give this a try. I don't believe either of you. Like, this is ridiculous." So she does it, and she asked what the name of her parents were, and it gave it to her. So by this point, she was freaked out. My mom and my sister were like, "Peace out. We're leaving. Bye." I decided to stay and play around with it for a little bit longer, just because I was just so like into it at this point. The lady, the shop owner, I guess, she comes up to me and she says that she can tell that the triangle has built a connection to me, and she wanted to offer it to me for free. Take it with me. And I told her, "No, thank you. I really don't need to get any more involved with this than I already have." And she said, "This may be a long-term decision that you will regret." And I was like, well, that's kind of threatening, but no thanks. I really don't. I appreciate it, but no thanks. So I leave. She tells me bye. I say bye to her. Then the next day, I was thinking about it. I was like, you know what? Maybe I will go back and get it, and I'll take it and show my friends, so my friends will know that I'm not crazy when I tell them this story. I go back, I walk over to the store, and the store is gone. There's no signs, there's no product, there's nothing in this store, and on top of that, it looks like it's been run down and been sitting there for a very long time. What? Okay, that's weird. So most people would say that their story ends at this point, and that was just a weird thing that happened. This was just the beginning. All of this started happening around 2005. Until this very day, things are still happening. Stay tuned. I have more stories. It gets way crazier from here. Hey Morgan, yes, I was having a hard time describing the triangle. I did make a terrible drawing for you, so don't laugh at me. Here it is. All right, it's got the eye in the center, alphabets, and numbers 0 through 9. That bottom part there is just a representation of the base that held the triangle, and that black piece there, that would be the dial. It's really hard for me to draw it, but basically it was able to swivel and move around the whole triangle and just spell the words out. So I hope that helps. My ghost story continuing on from part 1. After my family and I get home from the arts and crafts show in Dahlonega, Georgia, a few days pass and nothing happens. Honestly, we tried to forget about that whole experience at that shop in Dahlonega. However, small things started happening in the house that didn't really seem like a big deal at first. For instance, the water dispenser in the refrigerator started leaking water one evening and caused my mom to slip and fall. Lights would start blinking throughout the entire house. I would hear voices calling out my name. Sometimes it would be a female voice, sometimes it would be a male voice. It was voices I did not recognize. This also happened to my mom and my sister. My dad never experienced any of these things. Stuff would just randomly fall onto the floor, and this went on for months. We weren't really connecting anything that we were experiencing to the triangle, and honestly, even today, I still don't want to acknowledge the triangle in terms of it having power, because I just don't want to do that. And just for the record, I do not endorse using these types of things. However, I know my experiences are real and I know what I've seen. I will never, ever, ever touch these type of things again, and I do not recommend that you do either. I don't know how to explain my experience except for just to tell you about it as best that I can. Okay, back to the story. A good amount of time passed with nothing happening until this one night I had a sleep paralysis moment. I've never had that in my life. It was super scary. I remember waking up in bed and having this overwhelming sensation that someone was in my bedroom watching me. I could see a shadow-like figure out of the corner of my eye, and I tried to yell out for help, but I could not move and I could not speak. This was about 2 or 3 in the morning, and I just laid there for a while, and I don't know how long I was just laying there for, but eventually a very loud bang comes from the kitchen. This wakes my parents up. My sister is at college at this point in time, so she did not experience this. My mom yelled out my name thinking that something really bad happened to me, and at this point I still could not respond. I finally got out of the sleep paralysis and I jumped up out of bed only to fall down to the ground. Why? Because my legs were super numb. When I tried to stand back up, it felt like my legs were jello. So I just kind of had to lay there for a few seconds before my dad comes rushing in. He sees me on the floor and asks me if I'm okay, which I tell him, yes, I'm fine. I fell out of the bed when I was getting up. And I did not have time to explain to him that I was going through a sleep paralysis moment, and I did not even know the terminology at the time. My concern was that someone had broken into the house, so I expressed to him, I think someone is in here because I felt someone in the room with me, and he goes off searching the house looking for who might be in there. My mom keeps calling out my name, and I'm finally able to respond to her and tell her that I'm okay, that I'll be there in just a minute. I had to recollect myself and get up off the floor from having jello legs. As I was exiting my room, there's this hallway right directly in front of my room, and as you look down, you can see the kitchen and the dining room. Well, I noticed something in the dining room. I heard a sound, like a little clicking noise. Well, it was coming from this gas-powered heater that we had. This kind of heater is the kind that you have to push that button down and turn the knob, and then the fire comes on and turns it on. Anyway, so the thing comes on by itself, full blast, just poof, and I just take off to my parents' room. I stay in there until my dad comes back, and it takes him a while, but he does come back, and he says that he didn't see any broken windows. The doors were still locked. Everything seemed fine, but he did say that he noticed that the heater was on, and he asked me if I went and turned it on, which I told him no, I did not touch it at all, haven't been over there. So it was just kind of a moment of confusion, what just happened, what was that noise, we did not know. My mom and I were not able to go back to sleep, but my dad, somehow he managed to go back to sleep. It just didn't bother him as much. But the following morning, I get up to go get me something to drink in the kitchen, and as I walk into the kitchen, I notice something. The cabinet doors were all open. How? I do not know. Why? I do not know. But I went and got my parents and brought them into the kitchen and showed them. They were just weirded out because of what happened the night before. There just really wasn't any explanation as to why that happened. Several months passed without anything happening, and when things did happen, it usually happened at night. That wasn't always the case, but usually it happened at night. So this one night in particular, I was watching TV with my dad. My mom was going to the grocery store. I hear someone call out my name from the opposite end of the house. It was a female's voice. I asked my dad if he heard it, and he said no, he did not. So I get up and I go look down the hallway. You can see the hallway from the den all the way down to my bedroom. I see a shadow-like figure standing by my bedroom door. I can't make out exactly what it is, but I can tell it's in the shape of a human. So I am standing there frozen, just stunned at what I'm looking at. My bedroom door opened on its own, and then it closed on its own. The moment that it closed, a kitchen cabinet swings open and a glass falls out and breaks. And no, I did not sleep in my bedroom that night. After that happened, about a year passed with nothing else happening. That was until the summer of 2007. My ghost story continuing from part 2. It was the summer of 2007. My mom, my sister, and I had 3 separate experiences. So I'm going to tell each story individually, starting with my sister. My mom and my sister volunteered at a summer youth camp. They were there all summer long. I stayed at my sister's house during this time. When my mom and my sister arrived at the camp, everything went well for the first 2 weeks. Every day, my sister would get up very early to go on a 3-mile long run. One particular day, while she was on her run, she felt like she was being followed. She was the only person up at this hour and on a trail. As she was on her run, she would keep looking back behind her, and she couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. At one point on her run, she heard some rustling in the leaves, like someone was literally like right behind her, running, trailing her. She turned around to look. Nobody was there. It really freaked her out, and she decided she was going to run faster so she could get back to camp quicker. As my sister ran faster, she continued to hear the rustling and running sounds directly behind her. Although she did not look back anymore, she stayed focused and continued to run until she felt a strong gust of wind come blow past her. And then the blink of an eye, this man appeared out of literal nowhere and was on the trail with her, running alongside her. He had a distinct red scarf. The man ran past my sister. She did get a good look at his face. She did not recognize him as being a camp counselor, so she was thinking, I'm going to go straight to the camp director's office and report this guy just for safety. As she was thinking that, poof, the guy disappears. So when she did make it back to the camp director's office, she tells him everything, and he just sits there looking perplexed. It wasn't until my sister mentioned the red scarf that made the camp director realize something. He asked my sister to walk over with him to a wall in his office that was full of pictures. He goes over, he picks up one picture, he shows my sister of a man wearing a red scarf. He asks her to look at the picture, and is this the guy? She looks, she says 100% yes, that's him. The camp director informs her that he passed away 8 years ago, then goes on to tell her that he passed away on the trail of a heart attack. That was the only time that my sister saw the red scarfed man. In part 4, you will hear my mom's story that happened at the very same camp, but a completely different experience. My ghost story, continuing from part 3. My mom and my sister volunteered at a summer youth camp all summer long during the summer of 2007. This is a story of my mom's ghost experience while at the camp. My mom's role was head of the cafeteria. During week 3, strange things started happening in the kitchen, and they would only happen when my mom was there alone. One evening, while she was cleaning up the kitchen, she heard a noise in the kitchen cabinets. My mom cautiously walked over to the area of the kitchen with the cabinets. Thinking there might be a mouse inside, she picked up a broom and opened one of the cabinet doors, only to find out that no, it wasn't a mouse. It was a bowl that was just spinning in place. She used the broom to push the bowl, and it immediately stopped moving. My mom wasn't oblivious to what might be around her, so she just left the cafeteria for the night. The next day, my mom was preparing a big old pot of chili, getting ready for all the kids coming in for lunch. She was listening to some music on a boombox. The boombox was like nearby her, and she had one of her favorite CDs in there. Anyway, the music just completely stopped while she was singing, so she walks over to go check it out, see what's going on, and the disc is still spinning, but no music is coming out of the boombox. While my mom was looking at the boombox, she heard a noise over by the pot of chili, so she walks back over there, only to see the ladle that she was using for the pot of chili levitating over the countertop. So she just stood there and watched it for like a minute. My mom decided to flip the script on the whole thing here. She grabs the ladle as it's floating, and she starts talking to the entity and rebuking it, telling it that it has no power over her and it does not scare her. Right after she said that, the lights dimmed and the boombox started playing music again. Nothing else happened for the next several days. That was until this one evening when my mom was finishing up putting the dishes up, and she was mopping the floor. She was getting ready to leave the kitchen. She goes over to the light switch to turn it off, and she flips it off, and the light still stays turned on. She flips it several more times, and it doesn't cut off. Then boom! All of the kitchen cabinets open up, and the dishes my mom just put away fly out onto the floor. My mom is super annoyed at this point with the entity, and like a boss, she yells at it to clean up its mess. I'm not even kidding. It just got dark all of a sudden while I'm telling this story, so I'm gonna have to go somewhere else to finish this. And now it's thundering. Okay. This is much better. Now back to the story. Of course, whatever it was that did that, knocking out the plates, did not clean up its mess. So my mom had to go pick all the dishes back up and they needed to be rewashed. As she was picking the plates up, she could hear a noise coming from one of the cabinet drawers opening up. She sets the plates back down on the countertop and she turns around and it is that ladle again floating. So my mom goes over to that ladle and she snatches it up and she says out loud, "Nope, I'm done cooking for the night. You need to be gone." Right after my mom said that, a big mixing bowl falls to the ground. She turns around, she sees it on the ground, and what do you know? It starts floating as well. So what does she do? She's still holding the ladle. She takes the ladle and she chunks it, knocks it into the bowl. Both the bowl and the ladle hit the ground. My mom again rebukes all entities around her. All of the cabinet doors slam shut at that very moment, and that was the last time she saw anything while at that summer camp. My summer story of 2007 is up next. For me personally, it's still one of the scariest things that has happened to me so far. Stay tuned. Continuing from part 4. During the summer of 2007, I stayed at my sister's house while she and my mom volunteered at a summer youth camp. I had my sister's house all to myself. I was having a blast and not a care in the world until... So it was towards the end of June on this one evening, and something happened that absolutely terrified me to my core. I invited a friend over to watch a movie, and we decided that we were going to eat some pizza and ice cream while we watched the movie. So I put the pizza in the oven, and while it was cooking, we decided that we were going to play my Nintendo Wii. So we played it for a few minutes, and my friend got tired of playing the game we were playing, so she suggested another game. So I go over to my shelf to look for the one that she wants to play, and for some reason it's not on my shelf where I keep my games. So I thought maybe the game might be in my bedroom for some reason, so I go back there to see if it is, and while I'm back there, the oven timer goes off. So I ask my friend to go get the pizza out of the oven, and she does, and then moments later she comes back to my room with a pizza cutter in her hand, and she's asking me how many slices of the pizza do I want it cut in. As soon as I reply to her, the pizza cutter flies out of her hand and hits me across my face. If you look closely, you can still see the scar across my nose. My friend was completely mortified. She kept apologizing to me and saying that she did not throw it at me. She doesn't know how that happened. But you know what? It hurt really bad. I knew exactly what was going on though, and I knew that she didn't do it because I saw exactly what happened. But this was the first time that any occurrence like this physically harmed me, so it was a bit jarring. Even though the pizza cutter really hurt my face when it hit me, it didn't really do that much damage. I just went and got a Band-Aid and put it over my nose and told my friend that it was okay. I have not told my friend any of my experiences I've had in my life, and really, I don't tell them to people I personally know because I know it's just freaky and weird. But because I felt bad and I didn't want her to be upset that I got hit in the face, I just told her some of my experiences and then weird things like that happened to me, so don't worry about it, and just laughed it off. We ate our pizza and ice cream and nothing else was happening. It was getting towards the end of the movie and my friend started getting some text messages from an unknown number. So I paused the movie so she could read them. Remember, this is 2007, so we did not have reverse phone number lookup. The first text message said, "How's your evening?" To which my friend replied, "Sorry, wrong number." Then she got a follow-up text that said, "I'm speaking to," insert my friend's name, right? So we look at each other, freaked out, of course, and then there was another text that came that said, "Did you enjoy the pizza?" So my friend was like, this is a joke. It's a mutual friend of ours. She told her roommates that she was coming over to watch a movie. She assumed that it was one of them. So she sent a reply text and said, "Haha, very funny." Then she got another text that said, "How's Michael's nose?" We both knew that no one else could have possibly known about that because it just happened right before the movie and we didn't say anything to anybody. So my friend asked me if I was in on this joke or prank, and I told her very seriously, no, that I was not. My friend was saying she wanted to leave, and I told her I did not want to be by myself, so she told me to come to her apartment with her. So we got up, I go to the front door, I try to unlock it, and it won't unlock. So she tries it, it doesn't unlock for her. Then she gets another text that says, "Have a seat." Then my friend gets a follow-up text with a link to a website, so we had to go to my desktop computer and type in the website to see what this was, and it was a link to a video of a little girl singing a song, "Cuppy Cake." You can probably find it on YouTube. I'm not going to look. You can check it out if you want. At the end of the song, the power went out. My ghost story continuing from part 5. Once the power went out, it was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. The house had wooden floors that creaked when you walked on them normally, so in a quiet house, you can hear anything, and we did. We started out by hearing small footsteps walking towards us and then walking away from us down the hallway. And then it turned into full-on running until my bedroom door slammed shut. My friend said that she was going to call the police, and she attempted to, but her phone started glitching out and mine did too at the same time. I'm talking like blinking off and on until they completely cut off and they would not cut back on. In the living room where my friend and I were, there are 2 doors that go outside, the front main door and a side door that goes to the carport. The door that goes to the carport, the door handle starts jiggling rapidly. So my friend says out loud, "I've already called the police, they're on their way." And as soon as she finishes saying that, the door handle stops jiggling. Then we hear the most creepy and eerie noise. The door starts to unlock slowly and the door opens on its own. But it doesn't open all the way, just cracked enough that maybe you could put your hand through. At this point, my friend was just convinced that someone was playing a nasty prank on us because this just seemed so unrealistic. She asked me if all the windows were locked, and I told her I thought so, but I wasn't sure. Then she asked me if anyone else had keys to my sister's house, and I told her no, they did not. My friend suggested we should try running out the cracked door, and I told her absolutely not, because if someone was out there, they obviously cracked the door open for us, wanting us to go out there, so we shouldn't do that. And she decided to come up with a plan that she was going to get her car keys and set her car alarm off, and that would give us maybe some time to run to her car while it scared the person away. And ultimately, I know this isn't going to work because I know what this is. My friend set off the car alarm and she was completely determined to go through that door, which I told her not to go through, but she wanted to go through anyway. So she runs through that door, through the carport, to her car. I run right behind her because I didn't want to be in that house by myself. We get to her car, which was just right at the front of the driveway, and all of the car doors swing open, including the trunk. My friend sees a man at the end of the driveway, which I did not see, so she turns around, runs back towards the house, grabs my arm on the way, and brings me back with her inside the house. She's screaming, "Lock the door, there's a man out there." My ghost story continuing on from part 6. My friend was hyperventilating once we got back inside the house. I was doing my best to calm her down. She kept asking, "Why is this happening? What is going on?" And I didn't have a good answer for her. Up until this point, I've never had anything quite like this happen, and it was really terrifying. Yes, I've had scary experiences before, but this seemed different than my past experiences. Anyway, my friend and I go back over to the couch to sit. Remind you, it is still without power in the house, so we just sat there for about 5 minutes in the dark, just waiting for something to happen, and as you can probably guess by now, it did. We hear someone laughing in the hallway, and my friend is absolutely certain at this point that this is the end for us. But then the power comes back onto the house, and so do our flip phones. With the power coming back on, my friend and I thought, finally, everything is over. She still wanted to leave and go back to her apartment. I was hesitant. She was going to leave whether I wanted to or not. So I went and got my baseball bat, knowing that it probably wasn't going to be of any use, but if there was someone outside, at least I would have something to defend myself with. So I go get my baseball bat, I go outside, she stands in the doorway watching, just, to make sure that everything's going to be fine, and if it wasn't, then she could just go back inside and shut the door. I guess leave me outside, I don't know. But anyway, I walk over to the car with my baseball bat, I look on the inside and the front side, the back side, the trunk. I didn't see anything, so I close the 2 back doors and I close the trunk. I look over to my friend and I wave her over because there's no one there, so she can come over and get in the car. She comes running over, gets inside, and she leaves the front door open. So then I have to walk back over, go shut the door and lock it. And when I turn around, I see the man. He wasn't in the driveway, he was on the street, but he was looking at us. So I take off running to the car, I jump in, I look at my friend and I say, "I see the man, let's go, let's go." She pulls out of that driveway so fast, she just backs out and just takes off. So she does call the police on the way back to her apartment, and they actually got onto her because they thought that it was a prank. I mean, they weren't going to be able to do anything anyway. We make it back to my friend's apartment with no further instances, and my friend never had any other experiences after that night. If you thought that was intense, you haven't heard anything yet. Enter my cousins.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
Like 4 years ago-ish, I was living with my parents and I was getting ready one morning and everybody else had already gone to work. And I was downstairs. I heard a loud bang upstairs. So I had to check that out before I could continue having a peaceful morning. So went up the stairs, turned towards the room where I thought the sound was coming from. And in that room, there's this little nook. It's like a rectangular cutout in the left wall of the room if you're standing in the door. And I saw a black figure, like, it was a black figure, so I didn't have eyes or anything, at least in my memory. That's how I see it. But it was looking at me. And when it saw me look at it, it like quickly tucked in back into the nook. And I, after seeing that, quickly ran down the stairs as one does, and as one would, and as one did, and went outside to their sunroom. And I was like gathering myself because that was spooky. Uh, and while I was waiting or standing out there on this in the sunroom, I heard creaking on the steps. It sounded like clearly somebody walking down the steps. So I got closer to the door so I could hear. And as the steps got closer, like towards the bottom, I'm guessing, of the stairs, um, I heard somebody go, "Hello?" And so I was out of there. I went to my car and I didn't have my keys, but my car was unlocked. I didn't have shoes on or anything, so I wasn't going to leave, but I just wanted to be as far away from the house as possible. So I called my dad. He only works about 10 minutes from their house. So called him. He headed towards the house. And while I was waiting, um, my car was facing towards the house. So I would have seen if anybody came out, or anything like that. But when my dad got there, we checked and there was nobody to be found. And my theory is that it was one of those instances you hear people talk about where the ghost or the spirit was existing in its realm in the house, and I was scaring it while it was scaring me. Like, we kind of did the reverse. It scared me, so I went to go check it out, and then me checking it out scared it, so it was like coming down the stairs to check out if I was gone. I don't know, but yeah, there was a couple instances in that house where I saw black figures, but that was the spookiest one by far.
Me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but isn't.
I wouldn't consider what happened to me really super scary, but it happened to me, so it's really super scary. We agree? Great. Okay. So, painting you the picture, I'm about 11 years old and we moved from New York to Connecticut. Now, the circumstances in New York were not the best, so moving into a housing authority in Connecticut was damn near luxury. 3 floors, basement, 2 upper living areas. Great. After a while, my mom's just like, "Hey, why don't you go outside, go socialize, make friends?" I socialize, make friends, really nice friends. And all the kids are asking me, "Hey, what house did you move into?" And I tell them what house I moved into, and they all stop and stare at each other like this. And I'm like, "What's going on?" They're like, "We can't believe they let anybody move into that house. It was so vacant for so long because of what happened there." And I'm like, "Oh my God, what happened in the house that I'm living at?" They say, "Oh, a man died in there." So, excuse me? They're like, "Oh yeah, a man died." Now, all their stories are different. Some are saying that he fell down the steps, broke his neck in the basement. Some people are saying that he hung himself in the basement or murdered in the basement. Everything happened in the basement. So I'm like, "Oh, okay, great." I run and I go tell mommy what happened. Mommy's like, "Está bendecida." She's a Latina woman, heavy accent. She's like, "Está bendecida, you're blessed." And I was just like, "Mommy said I'm good, I'm good. I don't even worry about it." I had something happen to me when I was younger to give me like full protection. That's a different story for another time. If you want to hear it, let me know. Anyways, so I was like, "Okay, cool." Don't even think about it for about like 2 weeks, maybe even a month. Completely afraid about this dead man that died in my basement in my house. So me and my sister getting ready to go to bed in our room. Mom didn't like really us having a TV in our room, so me and her would just chit chat until one of us knocked out. She started feeling sleepy. The lights were on her side of the bed, on her side of the room. So she shuts it off. And I'm laying there in my bed in the dark. I'm not really concerned. The dark really doesn't bother me. So all of a sudden, I feel like this unsettling, eerie wave come into the room. unexplainable. But if you had something happen to you before, you know what I'm talking about. So I start calling out her name to see if she's really knocked out, and she is. She does not respond. I'm like, okay, right. So I'm about to jump out of my bed to jump into her bed, but I couldn't move. Your girl was stuck, frozen. I couldn't even pull the blankets over my head. I'm like, okay, cool. So after a while, the reason why I wanted to jump out of my bed into her is because I felt like something was coming towards me, right? So after a while, when I mustered the courage to jump into her bed, this roar comes out of nowhere. This loud roar. It's angry. It's pissed. It feels like we're intruding in his space. And I get goosebumps so bad. I didn't know what to do, so I started praying. So I'm praying, and then I prayed so hard that I prayed myself to sleep. I woke up the next morning. I told mommy what happened. I told my sister what happened. They know I don't talk about like things like that, so my sister knows I'm serious. Her face looked as white as a ghost. My mom's just like, pray to God and don't even think about it, and that man will go away. And lo and behold, she was right. I never heard that thing again.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So I don't know if you've seen that stitch going around on TikTok. I'm part of the scary side of TikTok, so I hear the ghost stories all the time. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna play a little part in this, but I don't know if I'm gonna post it on TikTok. I'm gonna share it on my close friends. Maybe it will go on my TikTok soon. So, if you know me, I have a lot of paranormal experiences from my house, from Franklin, my family, my grandpa visiting me in dreams, and like at our ranch. So I used to have a ranch before my grandparents passed away, and we would go there all the time, like over the weekends, etc., etc. But the ranch was haunted by a little girl. She was a blonde little girl, and she would always, like, I've seen her before. She would wear like a white dusty dress. She was blonde, like a dirty blonde, almost like my cousin Vivi. She was pale, and then like she had like brown eyes. We think she brought a little friend one day, and she was the opposite of her. She was like a Wednesday and Adams kind of bitch. So that's important for the description. So one day my dad invited me and my sisters to invite our friends to go over to the ranch for a cookout. And every time we would go to that, like my ranch, we would play a game called Blind Chicken. If you don't know what it is, it's basically hide and seek in the dark, like the Conjuring movies, if you've seen that. Um, and we would make sure to play in the haunted room for some reason. We thought that was like fun. Anyways, so it's like a bunch of us in there, like probably more than like 10-ish people, and we're all playing hide and seek. And my dad comes in at one point. He's like, hey, just letting you guys know, like, I don't know if he said that we were gonna leave or if the food was gonna be ready. I'm still not sure about that. So we're playing hide and seek, and one of my old ex friends, we're gonna call her Jennifer. All right. Jennifer and I were like, oh, like we need to get ready to hide with everyone. And I was like, yeah, but I want to hide by myself. Like they're going to know we're together. I don't want to be found. She says, okay. So I'm like, I'm going to hide behind one of the bunk beds. So my grandparents had like the room big enough for us to spend the night because we're a big amount of cousins. And they had bunk beds all lined on the walls of the room in case we wanted to spend the night anytime. So I kind of pushed one of the bunk beds behind and I hid against the wall, all right? Oh, the filter's gone. I hid against one of the walls, and whenever I went, one of my sister's friends, we're gonna call him Jackson. I don't know. We're using fake names because we're not friends with these people anymore. He is a kind of big guy. He was tall, he was buff, worked out. Nothing really scares him. He's like, I'm gonna hide next to you, all right? So we're hiding there. And it was time for the whoever was counting to come in. They turned off the lights, and when I say the energy shifted, I have never felt an energy like shift like that so quickly. Probably besides me being going to the Zach Bangs Museum in Las Vegas. The room energy shifted so quick, and I was scared, and I thought it was all in my head up until my sister's friend grabbed my hand and he said, don't worry, I'm scared too. And I was like, so we're playing the game, and out of nowhere you hear sliding against the wall, like literally like we heard sliding against the wall, and then we heard a little girl giggle like And we thought it was my sister's friend's little brother because he hadn't hit puberty yet, so he sounded like a girl. And then we hear my friend, my ex-friend, scream on top of her lungs. She starts having a fucking panic attack. We turn on the lights. She is having a full-blown panic attack. Can't calm down. We take her out of the room. We do that Mexican thing where we give her sugar to calm down. And she ends up telling us that when we were playing like the hide and seek in the dark, when the lights turned off, she heard someone slid against the wall and grab her hand. And she said that like she heard a little giggle, and she told her she thought it was her little brother. So she was like, "Hey Junior, like don't worry." Like because like she was gonna comfort him because it was dark. She goes to put like her arm down, and she says her arm literally went down and like hit the floor because like there was no one there. And when she turns around, it's a little girl, pale with long black hair, and she's like, "I want to play too." And after that, we're like, "Fuck this." And we're like, we're leaving. And we left the ranch. So, hope you enjoyed story time. I have a lot of those stories if you want more.